Hi, this is Amy Magyar at FromWithin Coaching, and today on CliftonStrengths Unpacked, we are unpacking with one of our guests today the strength of responsibility. So we are being responsible and inviting a guest in. So as always, I'm here with Coach Augusta Good-Crawl, and our guest is Lou Setnicka. And we'll talk a little bit about Lou. She's a member of FromWithin Coaching, but we'll talk a little bit more. But Augusta, as always, thanks for coming.
Oh, good morning. Nice to see you both.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is a chance for us to, especially when we have a guest, we love that, share a little bit about our experiences with CliftonStrengths, whether it is our own strengths or strengths of our guests or our former clients or current clients, and just talk a little bit more about how they show up. I just want to say something really quick that I sort of picked up on recently, which is strengths are not so much in a sense they're your being, they're not your doing. And I know that feels really weird, because especially with something like responsibility where it's an executing theme, it's how you do it. So that's the being of the doing, not just the doing. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and kind of talk about that a little bit here. But Lou Setnicka of FromWithin Coaching, nice to have you on board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So we're going to talk to Lou about her strengths, but as always, I'm first going to describe what CliftonStrengths feels their definition of responsibility is. People strong in the responsibility theme take psychological ownership of what they say they will do. They are committed to stable values such as honesty and loyalty. I think that's an interesting addition, because I don't know that always is what we think. If I was asked how I would explain, I do love alliterations and I love simple short sentences. So I would actually explain responsibility as a commitment contract. That those with responsibility have a commitment, and they create a contract with themselves and with those that they feel they've said they're going to do something for. So that's how I would describe responsibility. Augusta, how would you describe it?
Yeah, you took my word. The commitment is such a huge word, and with this talent, I believe, and I agree. It's not only a commitment to others, but it's a commitment to the word and to the execution of what it is they said they were going to do for others. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you know how I would describe it?
Please.
You ready? Neurotically conscientious.
Oh, I like that.
So Lou, would you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, well, it's just the neurotic part is I can't get away from it, right? It's just always there. But the conscientiousness part is the commitment contract. Like, I am not going to let you down, but I'm going to drive myself crazy in trying to uphold this commitment and uphold this responsibility.
Yeah.
That's why I call it neurotically conscientious.
Got it. Great strength as a coach, which is what you are currently doing for a living. But will you tell people, just give them a quick snapshot of the work in case this is their first time meeting you, Lou?
Oh, great. Yeah, I have a pretty strong background in human resources management. I spent a 25-year run at Patagonia, the outdoor clothing company, and had a variety of jobs there. And the one that I was most recently in was global director of HR. And since leaving Patagonia, it's almost 10 years ago now, I have gone out on my own doing HR consulting, and I did join Amy and Augusta at FromWithin Coaching. And coaching is, to Amy's point, it's a great way to leverage the responsibility strength, because I'm very responsible to my clients, not for my clients. And that was one thing I wanted to point out about this strength is it's a big piece of learning to realize that I'm not responsible for someone. I'm responsible to them. And, that was a big revelation for me personally, because I think lots of us that have responsibility, we tend to almost sometimes take responsibility for how other people are feeling or acting or doing, and we can't. I mean, and that's a big learning. So that's why I make the distinction, responsibility 2 versus 4.
That's what a great
Like
distinction. And I would assume too that having responsibility, although often with our strengths, we often assume when we didn't realize before they were strengths, we sort of assume that everybody thinks the way we think or does what we do. And we know that not to be the case. Everybody has unique gifts and strengths. But I get the sense, Lou, just having watched you coach and watching you support your clients, is that it's almost like, and maybe this is the belief, which is number 3, we'll have you list out your strengths, but I see it where I almost feel like you help people gain responsibility in their lives as a coach. It's like you're helping them see that they are in control of what they can say yes and no to, but also giving them that responsibility and the beauty of doing what they say they're going to do. Because that is a quote that I learned from someone that I worked with. And even though I don't have responsibility, he said to me, one of the worst feelings as a human being is to not do what you say you're going to do. And I think back to some of my largest regrets, and that is the key. That's been the key. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. As an HR leader or as an HR director, directing the HR function at an organization, what used to drive me crazy was when people wouldn't take personal responsibility for what they chose to do. So as a person with responsibility and an HR leader, to be able to point out to them, look, you had a choice in this matter. You chose to do X, Y, Z, or you chose to do A instead of B. Now it's time to take personal responsibility for that. And I see that very clearly, but a lot of people that don't have responsibility as a strength are afraid of that, or don't want to do that, or abdicate the responsibility.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Absolutely. I had, I really think when people have a strength that's in the top 5 and they're showing up with it, it inspires others, to show up to, or to whatever that strength may be. So for responsibility, I can really see how you can help others get more committed to their own actions and themselves. And what I'm really wondering, Lou, is I know Amy said something about belief being one of your strengths. I really love hearing what everybody's strength is, because responsibility shows up differently for you because of your other 4 strengths and your life skills and learning. So could you let us know what your top 5 are?
Number 1 is arranger. So I arrange things really well. This has nothing to do with the fact that prior to Patagonia, I was a ranger in national parks all over the US. So sometimes people go, oh yes, of course you have a ranger because you were a ranger. No, a ranger like a ranger. That's my number. Like I arrange things really well. The second one is responsibility, which we're talking about today. Third is belief. Fourth is developer. And 5th is positivity.
Yeah.
So in my work as a coach, so many of those are really, really useful in leveraging a strength as a coach, particularly developer. I just love helping people move from where they are to where they want to be. I define it as the optimal future. And then along the way, watching them take responsibility for what that's going to take as a client, that's really, really rewarding.
That is such a great example of companion strengths where 2 can play off of each other. So with developer, sometimes I've been told, I could be completely wrong, that folks with responsibility may feel the need to do it and almost like take it away from somebody because you know it's going to get done, and you may not have the faith that it's going to get done, although you have belief. But what's interesting with developer is I could see how it would be something where you probably you probably didn't micromanage as a manager because you realized it was a gift to give to people to take this project on or this thing on, and that kept responsibility from being probably too overwhelming, but that developer probably kicked in.
Kind of offset it a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, if you do, if you read about responsibility, one of the guard against with responsibility is a person who has responsibility as a strength may take on too much.
Yeah.
And they, you talked about this commitment contract, they will never let you down. And it's very hard for them to say no, because part of who they are is committing to you or being a commitment to you. So as a leader, if you're managing someone with responsibility, know that they're just going to always take it on. So there's a point in there about, wait a minute, what about responsibility to yourself?
Absolutely. Well, I was just going to ask you that, Lou.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because they talk so much about the strength being commitment to others. And so I actually had that question of, so how does it show up for you? And it sounds to me like it could be tied into that, discernment of what your best yes is, instead of the yes to everything that makes it neurotic. So how do you find that it shows up for yourself in commitment?
Well, it's taken a lot of work. And going back to the feeling responsible for others, a great example is I have two sons, and raising them as kids when they were hurt, or I don't mean hurt like physically, like get me to the doctor. I mean hurt emotionally. To not jump in there and take responsibility for how they're feeling. They have to be in there and feel that. And that's hard as a parent, because, you spend your whole life protecting them from harm. I mean, that's what you feel like your most important role is. But being exposed to hurt actually grows you as a human being. So that took a while. And somewhere along the way, I developed this zealousness for taking personal responsibility for what you choose to do. So I'm certain that's tied into my strengths, leveraging that.
One of our favorite questions to ask in this series has been, where do you see maybe responsibility showing up in your early age? So what was maybe the first example of responsibility as you were when you were younger?
Well, I had 3 siblings. I was the oldest girl.
There it is.
With 2 younger sisters. So I have no doubt that that responsibility piece was alive and well. Growing up. I can't think of a specific example as a very young person, but I'm sure it was there. You stumped me with that one as a really little person. But
well, it doesn't even have to be little. It could even be when you were in high school or college, how it sort of showed up.
Well, it's this conscientiousness, I went to college in California. At the time, my parents were living in Europe. This is long before the days of email and stuff. And I wrote to them every single week without fail.
That's a great example.
Yeah. And this is back in the days with those aerograms. Some of you watching this will not even know what I'm talking about, but they were, these things like this you could fold up and throw in the mail, and it'd be an air mail over to Europe where they were living. But without fail. And part of it was I knew how much my mom enjoyed hearing from me, and calls were very expensive. But I would drive myself crazy if I missed a week. And that's the neurotic part. And this is where people with responsibility have to be kind to themselves. Like, don't beat yourself up because you missed that week. Like, just be okay with it. Something happened. You weren't able to do with it. Add it to the next week.
You were being responsible with something else that made it come out of you being able to write that letter, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny, responsibility coupled with a ranger means that you kind of have this thing about, well, is everybody going to have a nice hotel room? And it's almost like you take on responsibility for the arrangements of an event or a trip, and that can become really tiring. So I love it when someone comes to me and says, we're going to this place and just show up and be here at this time and have this packed and we're going to go. So to not have the responsibility of arranging a trip is very freeing for me, but it doesn't happen very often because everyone knows I'm super conscientious.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I love that word, conscientious. And so what I'm wondering, Lou, is what I've seen come up sometimes with responsibility in clients is a kind of a sense of the right way to do things, almost like right versus wrong, or kind of, when we talk about our strengths can be in a raw form or a mature form, sometimes showing up as being a perfectionist almost.
Yes.
Can you speak to that at all, or?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And in some ways you have to be aware that it can make you rigid.
Yeah.
So, being a little bit, and maybe it goes back to belief, like being solid in your core values and who you are at the core, and having that give you the freedom to bring more flexibility in. It's good to have that belief in there too, because I know whatever I do, if I'm doing it in a responsible fashion, it's going to be guided by the core values. So I get to have a little bit more flexibility, I guess, than the rigidity that if you look at being responsible and being a perfectionist. I like things done well and right. I'll tell you where it shows up is I do a lot of editing for folks, and it drives me crazy when a comma's in the wrong place, and I don't know if that's a perfectionist or it's something about, this is a work product we're going to produce. I have a responsibility to make sure that it's as perfect as it can be. No doubt I didn't catch everything, but we sure as heck gave it a good try.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I had a client who also had responsibility pretty high. I think it was number 2 as well for him. And his wife said to him one day, he was working on a project that he had promised her. And she said, you've been at this for the last couple of weeks and it's so amazing, but what if this Saturday, instead of you working on the project, I think it was like a deck in the back of his house, she said, what if we just go, you and me, and we just go hike one of the local mountains? And he was like, no, because I have to get this done for you. And she's like, so yes, thank you. You did say that was a commitment, but if you're thinking about doing things for me, I haven't had a chance to spend any time with you while you've been working on this because you've been so focused. And so what was this beautiful moment where she reminded him that part of responsibility is the drive is to do what you say you're going to do, to uphold that promise for someone. But that sometimes, to the point of flexibility, sometimes the most responsible thing to do is to put that thing aside when that person wants you or needs you in a different way. And know that you'll get to it, right? But that what she was asking for is, I don't need you to work on the deck this week, and it's okay, it's going to be a week late. What I need is your undivided attention. And so it was an interesting moment for him to sort of be like, oh, responsibility isn't just what I do for people, but it's also how I show up and show up and be available, right?
And he could be looking at it through the lens of that commitment contract and saying, I committed to you for this deck, and it's really hard for me not to honor that commitment because of this responsibility. So it's a great example, Amy, of sort of shifting your thinking about, oh, but I also have a commitment to you, my partner, as a human being, and to be in relationship with you. So let me shift this energy for the deck over to you, and it's still through the responsibility lens.
So it's a neat way of sort of, even though responsibility is so much about being an executing theme, remember for both the highs and lows, the raw and mature side of these talents is that you don't want to make sure that it becomes something that is of detriment to the relationship that you're trying to support by finishing the goals, by ignoring the relationship, right, on your way to the goal.
So one thing for people with responsibility is they get highly disappointed in people who are irresponsible.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I agree with that.
yeah, because people with this strength just see the world as, oh, they talk in one of Buckingham, who started the Strength Finder, his earlier books, we have impeccable ethics. So
Yeah.
we see the world through this impeccable ethic lens. So when people do things that we view as irresponsible, it's very disappointing and it's really hard.
So my favorite word is judgy. It sounds
Yeah.
like you could get a little judgy about somebody.
Yeah.
Right?
As opposed to stepping back and looking at the circumstances. So back to your example, Amy, someone looking in might say, how irresponsible of him. He didn't finish the deck. Where they're not in there seeing, oh, he's actually shifting his responsibility to another important part of his life, animate versus inanimate. And the deck can wait. This human being needs you now. So that's the responsible thing to do. So
yeah, and that's again us being aware and understanding when things are dialed up so high that we're not also allowing some of our other strengths to show up, but that how they can become our weakness too, because we get so focused, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
What else, when you think about, Lou, when you think about this as a strength, and especially for somebody that has it maybe, and this is at least the data I was looking at, this comes up about 25% of the time between people's top five. So it is, and I laugh because this is a great example of, do the people that take CliftonStrengths, are they responsible? And so they want to understand themselves, they're responsible for themselves, so they take it more than other people that don't have it. I don't know, I'm not really sure, but it's just funny how it shows up. Lou, for you, what do you think is one of the most important things to sort of share, especially let's put you as a leader? If you have somebody with responsibility, what are things to know about that person and things to maybe not do or ask of that person because of the responsibility?
Well, one thing about someone with responsibility and as a leader, we're going to get stuff done, and we're going to honor you to the bitter end in getting this done. And going back to that commitment contract, almost the guard against is the potential for it to be the detriment to ourselves. So either beating ourselves up or working ridiculous hours. But if I'm assigned a task, I'm so reliable, I will get it done because I feel this deep responsibility to you. As a leader, it's interesting because you might tend to be very intent on the responsibility you have to those who you lead. So, you will take the time to find out what's going on for them. There might be a mixture of the strength of individualization in there. Like you're responsible. You realize that each person is unique. And you are responsible about their success and making sure that you have done everything you can to set them up to be as effective as they can at their job. So I would say that's probably how it manifests itself in leadership, one aspect.
I had an employee who was had responsibility. I think it was number 4 for her when I was still working in sort of the corporate world, and I never needed to send her an invite to a meeting. So we talk about it. Hey, how does 1 o'clock work for you? And I would start to send her invites in the beginning when I didn't really understand responsibility. I would send it to her and she's like, just FYI, you don't need to include me in the invite. The second you said 1 o'clock on Tuesday, it was in, and I have a reminder for myself. And that was a really great moment of, I don't need to remind this person of what they said they were going to do. Like, it's almost insulting to them.
Did she also have a ranger? Because that's what arranger people do. You say 1 o'clock and they go right to their calendar and put it in there. So it's possible that there was a sprinkling of a ranger in there as well.
But they sort of, they don't need the nudge. The other tip that I was given, and this will be interesting, Lou, to see how this comes up for you, is when you're in a meeting with somebody with responsibility, they're the great person to kick off the meeting to sort of share what is, sort of what everybody agreed to. and how, you know, maybe in prior meetings or what the responsibility is. And so I don't know that we do that in meetings as much as we go right into strategy or we go right into it versus having a seat back and saying, we're here because we said we were going to do X, solve a problem, find a new product, you know, whatever it is. And so I learned that she was a great person to sort of set up for giving me just a quick summary of where we're at and what we said we were going to be doing, why we're here. And it was a great, your face just changed.
I'm laughing. No, I'm laughing because back in the day when I was at Patagonia, it was the meetings at Patagonia were notorious for not starting on time. You know, people would just sort of wander in and stuff. And being the head of HR, I often was doing training or setting up all hands meetings or things like that. And by gosh, I would start them on time.
Of course
I
you
could
would.
care less if the room wasn't filled. I would look at the clock. If it was 9 o'clock and the meeting was starting at 9, we would start at 9 because I felt this huge responsibility to people and their time. For example, there would be people who would be there 10 minutes before, you know, get a seat in the front and for me, it became a matter of respect. I have a responsibility to you. I said the meeting was going to start at 9. I'm going to start it at 9. And the other people who wander in, I'm sorry if they're going to miss the beginning of the meeting, but too bad. They weren't taking responsibility for being at the meeting on time when they had plenty of notice. So
I didn't even think about that word respect until she said it, Augusta, just now, but how, you know, we've had a chance to work with Lou for a while now, is that we feel so respected, not just because of responsibility. It's because Lou is this incredible person who offers respect, right? So we give her our respect back, but that it could stem, part of it could stem from, we just know her integrity, her ethics, and she'll do, and if she can't do it, she'll let you know that, and maybe that's the maturity of your strength, because maybe that wasn't always the case, but you're able to say, I wouldn't be able to do it here, but I could do it this time. And we are also grateful almost that you didn't overextend.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I think that way of showing up balanced in a strength like responsibility, especially I guess with responsibility, really helps to create trust. You know, and there's a depth to it, but there's a trust in the dependability and in the, you know, your word is your word, and knowing also that you're not overcommitted or that your yes is a real yes. And so it's that nuance, right, of just being able to, and that's a beautiful thing. Trust is hard to find sometimes. So
the dilemma, going back to that example, the dilemma becomes the people who come in late and come back to you later and say, hey, I missed the first 15 minutes. What is, like in training or something, what did you introduce in the first 15 minutes? So with this responsibility strength, there is a little dialogue going on about, wait a minute, it was irresponsible for you to not show up on time. You should plan your calendar accordingly. But then the responsibility is like, well, I have a responsibility to the organization to make sure they're fully trained in whatever it is. So it creates this little push me, pull you, if you will, around this strength.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Good way to wrap it up.
Great.
Augusta, anything that you would like to share about your knowledge of responsibility, even working with Augusta, or anything for final statements?
Yeah, no, I love the vulnerability that you were able to say, the neurotic part of the strength is, because it's really true. When we can really recognize where we can get blurred with our strengths is a huge thing. So I bet that took time, and again, knowing our strengths and finding out how they work with each other and within our environments is key to all of that self-awareness. So it's great to talk about responsibility.
I appreciate having the opportunity to pull it apart what are you calling this? Unpacking?
We are
So
unpacking
it's cool
it.
to unpack it.
Yeah.
Pull it apart
We
in
will
all its
be-
dimensions.
We will be responsible and say our goodbyes so that the folks that are watching this, we promised them under a half an hour, so we will be responsible and keep it to doing what we said we were going to do. Lou Setnicka, as always, amazing to have you as a part of this.
Thank you.
For some of you that don't know, Lou actually introduced me to CliftonStrengths. At the time, it was Strengths Finders. Now it's been transitioned into CliftonStrengths many moons ago, and it literally changed my life. It is something I use every day, both to understand my own neuroses as well as my powers. But then we brought it into From Within, and is an enormous part of the work that we do, no matter whether you are you're looking for a career, your leadership, becoming a coach, you're a parent, right? It doesn't matter. This is so important to understand our drive. So Augusta, you've been on this with me for the whole year. It's been so amazing to have you. Thank you for unpacking. Speaking of responsible, it may be not your top 5, but you've shown up for all these. So thank you for being part of that.
I love this. So always, yeah.
All right. We'll see you.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the next. And thank you again.
Thanks.